Georgia MAGA Republican Party, in their attempts to rip up your vote and disenfranchise and suppress the vote, just got rebuffed by Judge Farmer in Fulton County in Atlanta, who found that Georgia law allows voters to take their absentee and mail-in ballots and bring it in to an election office to have it counted with the rest, as long as it's there by 7 p.m. on the close of the polls on Election Day. I'm Michael Popok. Where are you? You're here already. You're on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. There's the logo. We're building this in collaboration with the Midas Touch Network. Take a minute. Early voting has started. Push the blue subscribe button and help us build this channel to the other side of Tuesday. And I'm Michael Popok at the intersection. Let's talk about Judge Farmer and what the argument was. Let me take this plane up 5,000 feet and look back down. This is another example of the MAGA GOP all across the country trying to suppress the vote. That's a fancy way of saying they're trying to take away your right to vote. They don't want all the votes counted. They don't want all the votes being cast. They want to find ways to block the vote, to deny the vote, to push you into a provisional ballot, to sequester your ballot so they don't get counted in time. Why? What are the Republicans afraid of? They're afraid of voting. There's no other way to put it. The Republican Party is afraid of voting because they know if people vote in their interest and they vote with their hearts and their minds and their patriotism, they're going to lose on Tuesday. So now we've got a suit. It was relatively easy. I'm not sure this suit should have gone as far as it did. On Friday, the Georgia Republicans filed an emergency application and ended up with Judge Farmer in Fulton County, Georgia, same courthouse as Fani Willis, the district attorney prosecuting Donald Trump, same general location. And and the argument for the GOP, which is just a cover, a smokescreen, to try to take away the Georgians' right to vote, especially in Democratic strongholds like in and around Atlanta, whether you call it Fulton County or Gwinnett County or DeKalb County, Cobb County, all those counties. Heavy Democrats. I mean, Fulton County alone represents 11% of the total vote in Georgia, and it is overwhelmingly 70, 80, 90% Democrat. So if they can chip away at that, that's what they want to do. And they said, oh, you can't, those ballots, you can't have extended hours to accept them. Why can't you? So Fulton County kept their doors open Friday, Saturday and Sunday, Monday, before election to collect mail-in ballots. Those are ballots that you have. Instead of going to the polls on Tuesday, you've got your mail-in ballot. But a lot of states now require that the mail-in ballot, the absentee ballot, whatever you're going to call it, show up and not just be postmarked, but actually show up to be counted, to be cast on election day, by a cutoff. And people are worried, understandably. They know if they dropped it in the mail now, the chances of it being delivered with our postal service is slim. And they don't want to take that chance. So they have the mail-in ballot. Here's the mail-in ballot right here. The absentee ballot, whatever it is. And they want to run alongside, even though early voting has stopped, they want to be able to make sure their ballot gets in somebody's hands. That's what voting should be about. If you can tell the intent of the voter from the piece of paper and it's legitimate, cast the vote. And so the only reason the Republicans were like, no, we don't want any opportunities to accept the votes. That is voter suppression. When you hear voter integrity by a Republican, especially in a battleground state, I'll give you Popok Translate. It's like Google Translate. It means voter suppression. Voter integrity is the opposite. They're not trying to make it have integrity. They're trying to undermine your vote. They do that in a number of ways that we've gone over before on Legal AF. They shorten early voting hours, right? They shorten the time that people can come in. They eliminate locations for early voting, making it harder for people to vote, not easier, right? Or they don't have early voting at all. They get rid of drop boxes so people could drop off their ballot in and around election offices. They get rid of that. They make it hard. They make it so you all have to show up on election day. They make having ballots, any kind of early voting ballot like absentee or mail-in, they make it exceedingly hard. Very narrow grounds for an absentee ballot or no grounds for a mail-in ballot. And then they try to impose identification requirements. You already register with your identification. You already got put on the rolls. But no, that's not good enough. You've got to have the same registration. Your signature has to match exactly as opposed to letting the vote be cast and then prosecuting any offenders down the road. And so between these ID requirements, these shortened voting days and hours and locations, and now you've got this one. No, your mail-in ballot's not good enough. I mean, this is very similar to what we just saw in Pennsylvania that the United States Supreme Court weighed in on. In Pennsylvania, mail-in voting is already, there's a huge number. It's like 4.2 million people as of Thursday had already mailed in voted. And there's a small percentage of that, I don't know, 8,000, 9,000, 10,000, could be up to 30,000 by election day. They mailed in a ballot, which is allowed in Pennsylvania for any reason, or no reason instead of voting on election day, without missing a second envelope. You know, it's called a naked ballot. Sounds more interesting than it really is. The ballot is supposed to be in a security envelope and then placed in a real postal envelope, signed, sealed, dated, and mailed. Some of them are showing up with people are like, they forgot the security envelope. They couldn't follow directions, whatever. And so, but the ballot's in there showing the voter's intent, which should be enough. No, we're missing that. It's a naked ballot. We're missing the second envelope. And then there was a fight over whether the election offices had an obligation to tell the voter they effed it up, they legal AF'd it up, to let them vote in time properly. And finally, a state court judge, and then it went up to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, who ruled you have to tell them, and you have to accept as a second vote on election day, a provisional vote. One, let them cancel out the mail-in ballot that they screwed up and let them vote in person on what started as a provisional ballot, but actually gets cast as a ballot. Oh, GOP, apoplectic. Case went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, and there the Supreme Court declined to stop the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania's ruling. On paper, a good thing, except you had some craziness with Alito and Gorsuch and Thomas, who wrote not a concurrence, not a dissent, a statement trying to basically invite lawlessness and tell election officials they don't have to respect the United States Supreme Court. I got news for them. The highest court of their land is Pennsylvania, and they ruled in favor of telling people that they didn't get the mail-in ballot, right, to let them vote in time on election day. And now you see this new case. And this is one of 30 or 40 cases around the country that got started. That's the biggest difference between Trump 1 and Trump 2. Trump 1, they scrambled at the end with that crazy team, Giuliani and Powell and others. They started filing 60 lawsuits. They all lost. Now they're filing lawsuits early. They're arguing the election has been stolen before it's even been run. And so this is part of it. So judges, not just federal judges, but state judges, like Judge Farmer, like Judge McBurney, like Judge Cox. Shout out to my current Mount Rushmore of Fulton County judges, all protecting democracy. One step at a time, have already rebuffed in Georgia every attempt by the MAGA GOP to try to hijack the election and take it away from the voter. Now, other states will have to see what they do, and other Supreme Courts will have to see what they do. See, time, place, and method of voting under our Constitution is in the hands of the states. This is part of our federalism, the split between the state and the federal government. People think, well, it's a federal election. Shouldn't the federal government and Congress be the one determining how things go down in my local precinct? No. Yes, that would make more sense. But it has to go through because of this division of powers between the state and the federal government that put together our great United States of America coming out of the Confederacy of our country. This was the compromise. You run the polls, you run the counting, you run the vote, you do a certification, bring it up to us on Jan 6th, we'll take a look at it. And how did that work out on Jan 20? So that's what we're watching. And so generally, if you're a losing contestant in a election, Trump on the wrong side, if you will, you take your case to your state, start with a state trial judge, go up to your highest court of your state, like generally the Supreme Court. And then if you don't like it, emergency applications over to the United States Supreme Court or a federal court. Sometimes you do that simultaneously. But there's a lot of state court judge action going on right now that we're going to have to follow. And you're here. But the good news is, shout out to Judge Farmer. You did the right thing, because we should be in favor of legitimate votes being cast and counted and people being able to exercise and not be disenfranchised. We certainly support that here on the new Legal AF YouTube channel. Free subscribe. Early voting has started. We want to be here growing and energized with our audience, which is also growing and energized. I mean, we're at 275,000. We're only 6 weeks old. And we already have 18 million views on our channel. That's because of you, and I thank you. But we want to be on the other side of Tuesday, so help us now and vote. Until my next contribution, could be on the Midas Touch Network, could be on Legal AF, the podcast, on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and on audio podcast platforms, or the work I'm doing to curate what's happening here on Legal AF on an hourly basis. I'm Michael Popok, and I am reporting. In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.